Hello, all you beautiful Skrufftards. Welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And, well, like the title says, I just want to thank you all for helping me reach 10,000 subscribers. And it's a small channel, slowly growing steadily. I made my first video on the 16th of March 2023, and I made a video about the CV90. It was 1 hour and 12 minutes. That was my very first video ever for YouTube. And then a couple of videos later, I remade it with some better audio and stuff like that, and it became my first really successful video. The CV90, why the CV90 will dominate in Ukraine, and a lot of things I pointed out in that video actually turned out to be correct. How about that? So yeah, that was the start of the channel. Initially, it was a mixed bag of videos. I did stuff on Ukraine, I did stuff about Swedish military, I did stuff about science fiction movies and fantasy stuff in science fiction, in TV shows, in movies, battles we would see in sci-fi and fantasy and stuff like. And then realized, as I was moving into more and more into the Ukraine rabbit hole, I needed to separate those things. So I made a second channel, the Nerd Zone. I'm not as active on that channel, unfortunately. The initial idea was to make that type of content, but I kind of slipped into the Ukraine stuff because, well, I didn't like the arrows being drawn on maps by other YouTubers. I figured I can do that shit so much better, and I do have a decent track record. Maybe I should do a yeah. Well, this is completely unscripted, by the way, so I'm gonna point out some of the things I've been correct about in my predictions in this video, just for the hell of it. So I got I got annoyed by the fact that 90% of YouTubers, when they draw lines on maps, have absolutely no clue what they're talking about. So I fell into the Ukraine rabbit hole because of that, and started focusing on Ukrainian videos. So that is why I split my content into the War Zone and the Nerd Zone. My intention is to make more Nerd Zone content, because that is my real big passion, science fiction and fantasy and movies and TV shows. And recently, just a couple of days ago, I started a third channel, Scruffy Gaming, and the intention is to make videos about computer games. And my go-to game, my online opium, is this game Squad. So I've made 7 videos on how to be the most effective in that game, Squad. So this is my setup on YouTube at the moment, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun, let me tell you. And I've met a lot of very nice Skrufftards over the years here, and I've run into so many goddamn Vatniks you wouldn't believe. Anyway, well, why not check out some of my predictions during the Ukraine war to see what I got right and some things that I got wrong, but while still being wrong, I kind of touched on the things that actually happened. Let's take a look. So this is something I'm quite proud of, actually. I made this video here on the 30th of May. Well before the summer offensive began. Dead wrong, though, that the summer offensive would be Russia's worst nightmare. The title was way off. But what actually happened, I kind of got correct. Because remember how everyone was talking about Tokmak at the time? Tokmak. But when you took a look at the defensive map, the fortification maps, Tokmak was super super fortified, and so were all the roads leading in from the north, especially through Robotyne at the time, towards Tokmak. So I just went, makes no sense to attack through Robotyne towards Tokmak. You would be going through all the heavy defenses. So I speculated that Ukraine would more than likely attack somewhere between Polowy and Tokmak, these defensive hubs, and come in between where the defenses were weakest. And then I thought the main attack point would probably be Polowy, closest to the front line, trying to encircle that city and drive straight south towards the Sea of Azov. And as we would see later on during the summer, Ukraine did indeed try and avoid Tokmak. They went in between Polowy and Tokmak at the town of Verbove, that was the weakest point in the line. They went at Robotyne, yes, but Robotyne was right on top of a hill on the high ground overlooking the approach to Verbove. So they took Robotyne to push the Russians away from the high ground so that the assault units could then move in the low ground below Robotyne towards Verbove. So I was correct in my estimation, my guesstimation, that Ukraine would indeed avoid Tokmak and instead go in between Polowy and Tokmak. And during the Battle of Avdiivka, this is from the 31st of December 2023. I'm not sure if this was the first video I made to point this out. Maybe I made one earlier. But anyway, well ahead of the Russian moves to cut into Avdiivka, I made this video telling people how Russia would eventually break into the city, cut the vital supply line, and isolate the city from that big factory. And I explained it, why they would do this and how they would do it. And I more or less pointed out the exact streets that they would advance along. And sure enough, 1 or 2 months after I made this video, Russia pushed in along the left arrow that I'm showing you. They also made moves on the right one, but the main push came through that left arrow, down that exact path, along the exact streets, and Russia broke the supply line where I pointed out, and they effectively isolated the town from the factory, and that is when Ukraine decided it's time to leave Avdiivka. So 1 or 2 months ahead of time, I perfectly, damn near perfectly, predicted how Russia would advance into town and break the logistics, isolate the town from the factory, and force the Ukrainians to withdraw. And back on January 31st of 2024, I made a prediction that with time, Russia will have the troops needed to open a new northern front line. Russia can amass troops at Belgorod and Kursk and attack weaker and inexperienced border units. And of course, that is what we saw happen in 2024 with the Kharkiv front, and later on when they moved troops up to Kursk to threaten Sumy, but had to move those troops back to Belgorod. And I was talking about that Ukraine needed to do something to counter this reality. And I mean, who could imagine that they would invade Kursk at the time, right? So I was talking about they had to attack in the south to avoid the Surovikin line by attacking into Kherson, crossing the Dnieper. That was my thinking at the time, because who could imagine that they had the balls to actually invade Russia, right? But I realized that Russia would attack from the north, and that Ukraine had to build up to make something big to counter that reality. So I predicted the attack in the north and predicted that Ukraine would do something big to counter it. And now we're moving into a couple of things where I got things wrong, but still was kind of sort of correct. We're obviously talking about Operation Käftsmäll. I made many videos about this, and it's sort of linked to what I was talking about just now. The need for Ukraine to make a big counter move to counter Russia's aggression, right? And I thought I was keeping track of the number of assault craft that Ukraine was receiving, I noticed in every aid package they received more and more assault craft, heavy-duty assault craft from Sweden, Finland, and the Netherlands. I mean, state-of-the-art assault craft that would allow Marines to conduct amphibious landings, and a bunch of other transports and stuff. So they were building up 200 assault craft, 300 assault craft. So it was clear that they were building up to this, and they were holding Krinky at the time, so they had a foothold on occupied territory. And the Russians obviously also realized something was going on, so they moved down and had 100,000 troops in Kherson prepared for this amphibious assault. And then Ukraine made this promo video where they showed Marines storming beaches in training, carrying Ukrainian flags. And when that video came out, I was like, is this a psyop? Is this a psyop? Because the Russians had begun rebuilding the Dnipro fleet to more or less counter the buildup of the Ukrainian amphibious corps. And so I was wrong with Operation Käftsmäll. I'm still waiting for it. I still think it might happen eventually. But I was correct that Ukraine was building up for something big in 2024. But who could have known it was Kursk, right? But Operation Käftsmäll, that I call it, was, I think, part of the Kursk operation in being a diversion, forcing Russia to allocate 100,000 troops and equipment down to Kherson, as far away from Kursk as possible, right? So they announced the buildup of this amphibious force, and that tricked the Russians into moving huge amounts of resources down to Kherson. And then, of course, Ukraine launched their big counter to the Kharkiv offensive into Kursk, right? So yes, I was wrong about Operation Käftsmäll, but I was correct that Ukraine was building up to something big in 2024, and Operation Käftsmäll, as it were, was part of it as a diversion. And then you had Toretsk, where I thought there would be an encirclement. I was, of course, wrong. They went straight into town. I was like, what? They went straight in? Because I thought that they would focus on Toretsk, not Pokrovsk, and make an encirclement. Encirclement was how they took Bakhmut. Encirclement was how they took or tried to take Avdiivka. We're seeing it now with Pokrovsk, the encirclement. So I thought at Toretsk they would make an encirclement, and that would cut off the city, and then they could move in. I was completely wrong, because they went straight into town. Why? I have no idea. But if they had put focus on making an encirclement, it would have cost them far less troops. I can guarantee you that. That said, though, when I was making videos about Toretsk, the rumors were that Russia would begin pushing towards Pokrovsk. I didn't really believe it at the time, truth be told, because Pokrovsk was so far away and Toretsk was right there. But I didn't make a video where I said if they're pushing for Pokrovsk, they're going to follow the railroad out of Ocheretune and follow that railroad as it's snaking its way towards Pokrovsk to secure supply lines and to avoid rivers and lakes. And sure enough, when they did begin that push towards Pokrovsk, they did follow the railroad out of Ocheretune westward and kept following it as it was snaking its way towards Pokrovsk. So I was correct in that assessment, that if they're gonna make a push towards Pokrovsk, they would follow the railroad. And we have, of course, Kursk and Sumy Oblast. Who would have known that they were planning to push in on Kursk, right? But quite proud of myself when it came to predictions concerning Kursk and Sumy. I got a lot of things correct here. On the 21st of August, this pissed off the Vatniks. Russia will be unable to secure Kursk Oblast in 2024. You can't really say I was wrong there, right? Made the correct prediction, looking at how Russia has achieved operational success so far in war, needing 6 to 8 months to achieve success. It is highly likely that Russia will not be able to push Ukraine out of Kursk Oblast in 2024. And we were correct. And later on in that operation, that campaign in Kursk, I predicted how Ukraine would eventually fall back after Russia had amassed enough troops to push them out. I said that was going to happen, and that that was Ukraine's plan, to move as many Russians as possible away from the front line in Ukraine and lock them down in Russia instead, right? Weakening the front line in Ukraine and moving Russian forces out of Ukraine, essentially, into Russia. And Ukraine would eventually fall back to rivers surrounding Sudzha. And I also predicted where Russia would push in to cut the logistics. I went well ahead of time, and that is what we saw happen. So yeah, I got a lot of things correct during the Kursk incursion. Very proud of that. Figuring out what the Ukrainian plans was, telling you correctly how Ukraine would fall back and the dangers of where Russia would eventually move in, and the Russians did move in as I suspected. And then I went on the 18th of March. I think I maybe made a video before that talking about how Ukraine would defend Sumy Oblast, and explaining to you that it would become the Battle of Kane, where the Ukrainians would fall back into this and form a cauldron. The Russians would follow them into this cauldron, and Ukraine would just rain hellfire onto the Russians. Because Ukraine had had 10 months to prepare defenses here, pre-ranging every square inch and being able to have overlapping fields of fire from every angle with every type of weapon imaginable. And the Ukrainians were planning to crush the Russians in Sumy Oblast, and we're seeing it. We've been seeing it, that the Ukrainians have gained the advantage. They were outnumbered 3-1, and they still managed to counterattack. They still managed to push the Russians back, grinding them down. And there was this big air assault where they dropped off special forces behind Russian lines and took out hundreds of Russians in a very daring operation deep behind Russian lines. So I was completely correct about Ukraine planning a massive trap within Sumy Oblast, well ahead of it ever being a reality. Very pleased with that. And then, of course, Pokrovsk and Russia's flanking maneuvers. I've been making videos about Pokrovsk well before this one, the inevitable battle on the 14th of October, where I was talking about how Pokrovsk would become Stalingrad, where Ukraine had the potential to crush the Russian army. And I also said that the Russians were aware of this, and that they would therefore try and surround Pokrovsk and Myrnorod. They would not want to enter too early, because if they did, with Ukraine having supply lines open, that meant that Russia would be crushed within Pokrovsk, right? The Russians knew that if they just went in, they would be destroyed. They had to move around on the flanks to cut the supply lines. And I said throughout in various videos there that I expected Russia to reach Udachne and Kotlyne, but I wasn't sure that they would be able to push past Udachne and Kotlyne, maybe reach that main highway there, E50, but I said that Udachne and Kotlyne might be the furthest extent of their advance, and it was. And then they would push up to the east and try and come into the north, as you can see here, at Razine and Rodynsky. And the reason for this was to secure a number of supply lines for their own troops, was the reason to coming out on the flanks, besides cutting Ukrainian supply lines. And they also wanted to create space for their own artillery, so that they could launch as much artillery at Pokrovsk as possible, and also reach supply lines and support units behind Pokrovsk. And all of that has, of course, played out. Now, the Vatniks at the time thought, no, I'm stupid, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, Pokrov's going to fall in 3 weeks. Yeah, right. So I predicted that Pokrovsk would not fall in 2024. The battle would go well into 2025. And as it looks now, it's going to go on well into 2026. And the Russians have tried to come up on the flanks where I predicted that they would move, and they did not manage to push past Udachne and Kotlyne as of yet. That may still happen, obviously. So I'm kind of proud of this one as well. I have had a decent track record when we're talking these larger operational maneuvers. Even on the strategic level, I've had some success. And I've been correct when zooming in and talking about finer details in tactical maneuvers through woods and through streets and what have you. So yeah, successful when it comes to predictions and drawing arrows on the map. Unlike many other YouTubers, I usually say that YouTubers who draw arrows on map, 90% of them get 90% wrong. Anyway, so moving on from that shit. Before moving on and ending the video, I want to highlight this video I made a long time ago, Operation Jadex-1. It's a true story about when the UN fought a cannibal rebellion, a cannibal uprising down in the Congo in 1964. A true story about how the UN handpicked the best soldiers on location in the Congo from various nations, put them together in an elite task force, Jadex-1, and deployed them with helicopters deep into enemy hostile territory in the jungle to rescue people that were at risk of being overrun, missionaries, schools, and that sort of thing, that were at risk of being overrun by the cannibal horde and being eaten as a consequence. This is a true story of tremendous courage, heroism, and insane combat between a few dozen UN soldiers and hundreds, at times 1,000 cannibals. Just insane. I really want to promote this video and this story, these heroes who have been forgotten. I don't know how that happened, how this amazing mission has been forgotten. One of the shining moments of UN peacekeeping missions. And I made a trailer, so please click the trailer before you click and watch the video itself.
Oh, you're old and you're free, you mountainous north. You who sit on a throne made from memories of distant and glorious days. Land of the midnight sun, land of the endless night, home to a people who will never surrender, who will always carry on the fight till Valhalla. This is our home where we were born, where we will die. Here where we believe in freedom for one and all. Here all are welcome. This is our creed, our soul, our call. For all men and women, united with pride, we stand tall till Valhalla. Ancient forests, snowy mountains, and icy winds, home to warriors and soldiers that defied all the odds, that defied mighty armies and all the cruel gods. Heed our war cry, centuries old, Gopalmarsh, onward to victory we charge. Gopalmarsh. Land of freedom, land of courage, where the mighty Bofors was forged, where the powerful Carl Gustav first roared, where furious dragons guarded the sky, where fearless griffins now proudly fly, where modern warfare was in battle born, when kings and soldiers alike were slain and torn. Kriget begin. We will fight through the ice, fire and mud, as our banners burn and fall and hit the ground. This is when our war cry will with a mighty thunder sound. Sound the hall from the age of long ships and shield walls, when we set sail to raid and plunder, to the empire's muskets and bayonets, when our charge tore the enemy asunder, to the bitter cold of the winter war, when our guns echoed like thunder, to the heat and jungles of the Congo, when our morals refused to go down and under, till Valhalla. Till Valhalla. United we stand, united we fight, united we